Hello, welcome to my channel. It's Tea with Teresa H Creates, and I am doing a process video on these gorgeous tea dyed papers. So I was playing around with some tea dye recently and just some basic copy paper, and I also mixed in some distress sprays and some distress oxide spray, and this is the result. I wasn't expecting a whole lot, and it just turned out so beautiful. I absolutely love them. And when I just posted kind of the show and tell on these, I got a lot of feedback that people would like to see kind of the process that I used. I talked through it. So if you're not interested in watching the entire process video, go ahead and go to the other video, and I'll post it in the details below. And it basically just kind of walks through quickly what I did. So if you don't have the patience for all of this, then that's the one you want to reference. So anyhow, I wanted to start off just by telling you some basic things that you're going to need to get started. So let me set these aside so they don't get wet. And I did this outside. It's probably something that is better done outside. I just had a 6-foot long table, and it's an old table, so I wasn't worried about staining or anything like that. I didn't have a cover for it. If you're worried about it, wax paper, parchment paper. I think that those cheap vinyl tablecloths, the little cheap ones that you can get for parties at the party store or at the dollar store, would probably be perfect for something like this. But anyhow, I am in my studio and I wanted to protect my desk, so I did tape down some wax paper just to protect the top of my desk from any kind of staining through this process. I also wore clothes that I don't mind staining, but I am wearing my much loved and much used apron just because I didn't want to get my clothes wet in case of any splashing or anything like that. So that's kind of, these are the things that I don't typically have, but I'm using this time. I'm also going to be using a towel to put down to just kind of soak up stuff, because like I said, I'm in my studio and I don't want stuff everywhere. This doesn't have to be super messy, but I'm going to be spraying and stuff, and sprays tend to kind of spread out. So I'm going to be using a towel to kind of soak things up as well. So I recommend that you have 2 buckets. I just got these at the dollar store ages ago. This one measures, let me see, 14 and 3, just over a quarter, but less than 14.5 inches by 11.5 inches. And then it's about 4 3/4 inches deep. I don't think it's necessary. Something that you can easily put a sheet of paper in to soak is all you need. And it needs to at least be a couple of inches in height, just so that you can, submerge your papers. But I have 2 for this process. I recommend having 2, but these are also just convenient for me to store in my my rack, because I store them here in my studio. I also have a couple of just real thin, shallow baking trays, aluminum, and these were again, I think at the dollar store, and I just use them to hold the papers after I wad them up. So you'll see that in the process. This time, I also have a baking sheet that I'm going to put wax paper on to put my, when I do my stencil dies, but that's only because I'm doing it in my studio and not on the table. When I was outside on the table, I put them out on the table themselves. So you want a couple of large dies. I'm going to use these larger dies tended to get the best results when I was doing the tea dyeing and got the stencil images. So I've got some large dies. I have some just basic copy paper. I did pull out a couple of other things that I wanted to try my hand out. So we're going to experiment and see how these will dye. So I'm going to try craft tags. And these are just some size 10 manila craft tags that I have in my stash. And then I also have this tag pad that I've had for a really long time. It's by Julie Nutting, and it's Prima. There's 24 of them in here. I've used a few, but they're watercolor paper tags. And I had done a watercolor kind of experiment a long time ago, and I haven't used them since. So I'm going to go ahead and use the sprays and tea dye on that and see how watercolor paper kind of reacts with this whole thing. I have some paper towels just in case of a mess. I have a water bottle already filled with water. I have an extra spray bottle that I'll use to put tea in later. So you want an empty spray bottle. I have gloves, and these are just basic nitrate gloves. My husband keeps these in his garage to keep his hands clean while he's working out there, and I grabbed some because I didn't want the stain all over my hands. So I only have one Distress Oxide spray, and it's cracked pistachio, so I have that one. But I also have distress spray stains in Uncharted Mariner, Oh, I did not use. Oh, wait. I do have another Oxide. I have Crackling Campfire. We're going to use that as well. But I have Distress Spray and Speckled Egg, Rusty Hinge, Antique Linen, Peeled Paint, and Ground Espresso. So I have 2 Distress Oxides and 6 Distress Sprays that I'm going to use. And I did not use the Crackling Campfire in the first set. So that will be a new addition there. And then you will also need the most important ingredient. You will need your tea. So I just used Louisiana tea because this is what I had on hand. We're iced tea drinkers in the house, so I'm always making iced tea. These are the very large gallon size, family size tea bags in here. So your tea doesn't need to be fancy. It doesn't need to be expensive. This is just what I had in my pantry, so that's what I used. So my tea is cooling right now. You want to make it just like you would regular iced tea. So you want to go ahead and get your water boiling. I boiled a little bit over a quart because I wanted to leave room for evaporation. So I set a little bit over a quart to boil. And then I put 1 tea bag in there, left it steeping. You want to leave it steeping for at least 5 minutes or whatever the instructions say. And I, in fact, have it steeping a little bit longer just because I'm allowing it to cool down. So I am going to go ahead and set up the space to get ready to start dyeing and grab my tea, and I'll be right back. Hopefully you've got some of these on hand that you can play around with and you'll craft along with me. I'll be back in a moment. All right, and I'm back. I'm all set up. Got my towel down for messes. I've got my 1 bucket ready to go for tea. I've got my papers on the side. I've got my stencils ready, and I have my baking sheet, and I went ahead and put wax paper over that. And the only reason is because I still use that baking sheet in the kitchen, and I just didn't want any kind of, I mean, it's clean. I just didn't want any kind of cross-contamination. So I have my pot with my tea that's been steeping and it's cooled down. It's still warm, but it's not hot. I don't think that there's really any rhyme or reason to what temperature you need to do this at. It's still a little bit warm, but definitely not hot to the touch. You could probably let it chill all the way if that's something you're concerned with. But I am going to gently, see, I already tore this bag here. I'm going to gently squeeze all of the excess out of this tea bag so we can get every bit in there. Let me wipe my hands off. Okay. So this is it. This is the process. So what I was doing is taking my just basic printer paper, just the basic copy paper you can pick up at any store, submerging it. I'm going to pull it out and lay it on this sheet. And I'm going to do 3 of them this way. I'm just laying it on my baking sheet. And I liked that. And like I said before in my other video, I don't know if you've watched, when we got the, when I ironed them out and got the results of like the stencil. So I'm going to go ahead and lay a stencil here. And then I'm going to put 3 more sheets on top. I liked the variation. If I put, okay. Let me be clear. If I put something on top of this, I think to weight it down, I would probably get much clearer images of that stencil underneath, but I didn't want to. I thought that the negative and positive on either side of those papers was enough for me, but I liked the variation that I got having these papers stacked up one on top of the other. So that's why I'm going to continue to do that. So 3 on the bottom and 3 on top. If you have a larger bin that would easily fit this, then great. I just, this was just the size I had. It fits this paper, but I kind of have to work the edges to make sure I'm getting those. So that large stencil, I believe, was Spellbinders, and it's Snowflakes. I really liked how that turned out, and I'm prepping some pages for Christmas, so... But now I want to go out and buy all the really large stencils. So I need to start looking. I think some lace pattern stencils, or I don't know, maybe some botanicals, some florals would look really pretty. Really pretty. But all that little bit stuff you see there is going to give it just extra texture, extra spots. And you do have to be kind of gentle with the paper, because obviously it is wet and it's very thin because it's just basic copy paper. I'm going to put my other stencil down. This one is I think it's also Spellbinders, and it's a cable knit. Like the cable knit sweaters, so it's a cable knit pattern on that one. And I used a lot of different stencils. All of them turned out, but not all of them were this larger size, so I didn't get the full coverage on the page like I wanted. And that's why I decided to go ahead and just use these two as an example. Plus, I didn't want to make this super long. I can do a couple and you get the idea, right? And hopefully some of you paused the video, grabbed your supplies, and are doing this right along with me. I'd love to see results and how this turned out for you. Okay. Dry my hands. This is done. So I am going to set this aside and then we'll move on to the next project. Oh, you know what? I was going to do some of these others to see how this would turn out. So I am going to go ahead and add these. So I've got a large craft tag. I'm going to set that in that tray. So I'm going to do 2 large craft tags, just like, and I'm going to use the same techniques that I'm using on the papers with the exception of the stencil. And then I've got this watercolor craft tag and just see how those turn out. So I've got these tags that I'm not using. So that was 2 craft tags and then 2 watercolor tags. All right, let me set those aside. Okay. Next, we're going to do the sprays, the dyeing with the sprays. So I'm going to need, move these over. I'm going to need a second bucket. Okay. And you will see why. So I'm going to do several of these to kind of get some variation. So what I'm doing is putting it in the tea dye. I'm going to put it in the next bucket. And then I am going to spray. And I was doing this kind of at random. So this is that speckled egg. And then we start off with some of the lighter ones. You can see, and I'm only doing one side. And then let me get some of the darker in here. Just maybe a couple of sprays. Because those Distress and Oxide sprays are water reactive, they're going to continue to move around. So I'm balling that up and setting it to the side. And we'll go on to the next one. And I think that if you're just not super particular about what you want and you're just spraying, that probably lends the best results. And we were kind of mixing these colors after a while. And that's the Uncharted Mariner and the Rusty Hinge. And then you want to pick them up and wad. And I'm not doing them double-sided, just the single-sided. You're going to get a lot of transfer of this ink on the bottom. You'll start seeing it come through. You have the transfer of the ink like you can see on my hands right now. Kind of want to get all these colors represented in here. We're going to ball that up. And I know it looks like a mess, but this is what I did. This is how it works. So hopefully it wasn't a fluke. And it works again. I really love the Rusty Hinge. The one thing that I love, one of my favorite colors in the Distress inks is is it Wild Honey? I think it's the Wild Honey. It's the one that has honey in it. And I need to get a spray of that because I tend to use that quite a bit when I'm doing my distressing, just because I really love the way that color looks. All right, let's toss some Oxide in there. Look at that. And because it's a little bit more opaque, you start getting kind of that milky look on it as it dries. See, they're all moving. It's all traveling. And like I said in my previous video, and what I noticed when I started ironing them out is the tighter you ball those up, the more wrinkles that you're going to get, the more lines you're going to get. But you can see with that tea on there how they're moving around. So that was antique linen and the peeled paint. And I couldn't get the shaker on my crackling campfire to mix, so I'm not going to include it in this one. I didn't in the last one anyway, so it should be fine. And that's that speckled egg. It gives just a light tone to everything. Let me see. These are going to travel. All right, let me do one more, and then we'll go on to the next technique. Well, we'll do the, I really like the speckled egg. We'll do this one, and then we'll move on to the next technique. All right, ball that up. So we've got 8 of those. And now, let's try with these guys, see what happens. Because those aren't being balled up, I don't know what that's going to look like, but we're going to let them dry like that and see what happens. I mean, I've got it all out, so might as well play around, right? And it's kind of swimming in that tea, so again, I don't know what that's going to look like, but we will see. We shall see. And then we'll do a couple of watercolor ones. I'll just do these together. We'll do the same color like this Uncharted Mariner. Let's do some dark ones. See if maybe some of the dark shades will get picked up in that watercolor paper. Very nice. All right. I'm going to set these aside on some of this wax paper. Good deal. And look at that. Isn't that pretty? And it's not muddy yet. It will become muddy, but it's not muddy yet. Okay, I should have, because I added the tags and didn't plan for that. I don't have as much space as I would like. So I'm going to put down some more wax paper, and I'm going to transfer these guys to the wax paper over here so I can use this tray for the next technique. All right, those guys transferred. I'm going to set this tray aside, and now we can move on to the next technique. And in this one, you're going to need your empty water bottle or spray bottle, and then ever so gently pour the remaining tea into it. A funnel would probably be nice. I didn't think about that. So we're just going to gently pour this into the spray bottle. And I've got a little bit extra, that's fine. I'll probably do some more tea dyeing off camera later. Let me turn that to the side. Make room up here. Make sure there we go. Make sure both of my spray bottles are working. Okay, they're all working. We're all on full cylinders. Okay, let me move my stuff over. Here we go. Now I'm just going to work in this. And the reason why I'm working in this one is because I'm not going to be dipping it in the tea dye. and I really want this to be picking up in the background. So I'm just going to put this on the paper in there, spray it down with some of these inks, and then I'm going to spray after, so then it starts getting those moving again. I'm going to ball that up and set it aside. I keep thinking I'm picking up that Uncharted Mariner and it's that speckled egg, but that's pretty. I mean, what is that? Hold on. Yep, speckled egg. And then, okay, cracked pistachio. And I'm going to get in all those white spots with the tea dye. Get that to move around. And that's why you have the variation in that paper when you unroll it. When I unrolled it and I ironed it out, is because some of it, you know, not everything was getting wet, particularly on the back side, but it left some really muted, very pretty papers. So got some tea dye on that. Ball that up. And next, and so there's just not a whole lot of thought in it. You just start spraying stuff and see where it goes. This definitely wants me to get more sprays, so I need to up my spray game, my inventory. Okay, that was another tea, and now we'll move over to the water. Get some of that oxide in there. Ball that up. I really love that color. It is so pretty, and it's pretty with the rusty hinge. You keep using the same colors. I'll try to mix it up some. I just really like this. I need to get that wild honey, I'm telling you. So pretty. Some green in there. Get it moving. You'll be surprised looking at this that when I unroll them, how much detail and variation you're actually going to get from them. It's just, it's so pretty. So very pretty. And water. So my daughter was doing this with me, so we had both buckets going, but I had used most of the tea, so all of it poured into the spray bottle that we were using. So that was nice to be able to spend some time outside playing around with her. I'm not going to use the water on these. I'm going to use these. And because I'm not balling these up, again, I don't know how that's going to turn out. But I'm going to go for it because I think it looks super pretty. Okay, I'm going to set one aside just so that we can, because that was my last one, just so that we can see the variation in it after the fact. Like after they've dried, you know, compare to see how much of that ink soaked up in there, how much of that tea dye soaked in as well. So pretty. Oh, look, I had it covered. So that'll be a little bit different. Let me set these back here. All right, and that was it. That was all that I did. I'm going to set these outside now, these trays, these papers, and I'm going to let them dry outside. So I know that you can bake these in the oven. I've never baked my sheets in the oven. So, and I don't want to put the stencils in there for sure. That probably would not be a good thing. But I do live in Texas, which is in and of itself its own oven. So I'm going to set them outside, allow them to dry. And then when I come back, we will do the unwrapping and ironing so that you can see what we've got. And I'll be back later. Hello, I'm back. Our bookmarks and our pages are dry. I've got my iron warming up over here on the side. I've cleaned everything off. I did that earlier. When I put the bookmarks out to dry, and the papers as well, the bookmarks dried in about 30 minutes. So by the time I was done cleaning up this entire space, they were already ready to go, except for just a couple of them that needed maybe 10-15 minutes longer because of some pooling spots on them. But these are how they started. So this is the original color, and this is the manila tags, and then this is the watercolor tag. So you can see how much of that tea dye was soaked up by these tags, and this was just dipping them in that slurry. And then the next process we did is the watercolor tags. We dipped them in the tea slurry, and then we sprayed them down with the inks. And then you don't have, because we didn't actually ball them or change the shape of these, and just I left them flat to dry, so you just had the movement from all of the liquid on it. And those are the manila tags in the same way. And then the second method, or sorry, the third method was to just take them and spray them with the inks, and then spray them down with the tea, with the tea in the spray bottle after that. And so that's what that looks like. So you can see the actual movement in all of these as they dried. And then for these, you can see where they actually sprayed. See if you can get some of that detail in there. And then at the end, I was playing around. I wanted to use some more of that tea dye, and I liked the speckled eggs. So I went ahead and put these back into the tea solution. I poured it back into the bucket, and I put these back through the tea solution and sprayed those. So you can see all the lovely movement in those, because I just wanted to use those up since I already had them out and they already had a little bit of tea staining on them. And then this one I put in the tea solution, and then I pulled it out, I sprayed it, and then put it back into the tea solution, and then that's what it came up with. So it had already picked up some of the color on it, but then the tea solution washed a lot of it off, and so it's kind of mottled looking, but it's still picked up quite a bit of it. And then there's just a lot of texture on the backs of these, just from the drying racks that they were on, and just from the liquids coming off, and everything kind of blending and moving. So, but a lot of the backs, when I do them, I cover them anyway, so I'm not worried about that. I'll probably leave most of them as is anyway. I think these look really pretty, and you can still write on those, so I would leave them as is. But yeah, so that's the tag. So that was interesting. That was a nice little side experiment, but I know what you guys are all waiting for, right? So let's move on, and we will take a look at these guys. These are the stencil papers. So the tops are really dark, a lot darker than everything going underneath, and they dry and they start to crinkle up, and that's how you know they're done. And I left them in stacks like this and allowed them to dry. So these took several hours outside to dry. I'm going to say I left them out there they were out there for about 5 hours, all the papers and these guys to dry. So we will remove the stencil. So this one is going to be this lovely Spellbinders snowflake stencil. And I'm going to go ahead and just start ironing these. So I have this setting on the highest. So I think it's like the cotton linen setting. And I'd made sure to turn off the steam function, because I don't want steam. I mean, it could be pretty if you had that in there, but I don't want to mess with all the variation that I've got going on right now. So I'm not going to add any moisture after the fact to these. So you can see the patterns where they've laid on top of each other and all that bubbling and pooling. And it creates some nice effects. And then here we have the actual stencil that made a pattern. And that paper, isn't that pretty? And then here's the opposite side. And someone in my comments recommended getting like the plastic lace runners, which I didn't even think of doing the runners. I had been looking for placemats, but the plastic placemats to use, but they're kind of expensive. So I haven't purchased any. I've got a few in my cart at Amazon. And then someone else suggested, or was the same person suggested, maybe trying eBay. So I may try that to get some of those plastic lace placemats or runners to see if I can get a good result from that. I think that would be pretty. So that's those. And then this one is the cable knit sweater. You can see what that looks like. So pretty. Top page is always a little bit darker. And these honestly are pretty flat. You probably don't have to do this. I like to have them ironed out. It makes them just a little bit smoother. So I do iron these, but I don't think it's necessarily a must. Oh, I will also add those bookmarks. They bowed a little bit while they were drying, so they did kind of bow up, and I brought them inside after they were dry and put them under a really heavy book, and they've been sitting under that book until I came in here to record this. So I guess they were probably sitting under that book during the drying time of this, so probably about 4 to 5 hours. We stepped out and had some lunch and did a little shopping, so we were gone for just a bit while everything was drying. So it's been probably about 4 or 5 hours. And then last one, and I love the variations on this. And you can see where, you can see where this one had a bend in it, a fold in it, and it ended up folding up on this one. And so they both, well, I guess it was a fold in this one. That's what it looks like. And so it kind of ended up creating a texture or a pattern there. You can see when we were pulling it out of the tea, some of the tea ran. And so, yeah, but all of that texture and variety is absolutely gorgeous. You can see that cable knit in there. They're just so pretty and they feel good. And then another look at that snowflake. Aren't those so pretty? So I'd really like to try those lace placemats or table runners. That would be really cool. Okay, now for the dyed. So these are the ones that, I'm sorry, I'm going to try to talk over this crinkling and hopefully it doesn't get too loud. These are the ones that we put in the tray in that little bucket, and then we sprayed them down with the inks and then followed up with either water or that tea, the tea slurry in the spray bottle. So that's what these look like. You have to be kind of gentle unwrapping them. Sometimes they will tear. It happens. It's not, to me, it's not that huge of a deal, but I do try to be careful when I unwrap them. So even balled up wet, they're still fairly easy to unwrap. They sound a little bit crunchy. They feel a little bit crunchy on the edges. Kind of just smoosh them out. I think we did 8 of them like this, but using all sorts of colors. And I know, and that was the first time I did it too, I didn't spray on both sides because I knew that it was going to, because it's such thin paper, I knew that it was going to pick up colors from the bottom of that bucket. I knew that some of the colors were going to just bleed through. So 1, 2, 3, 4, yep, 3 more. So I just knew that those colors were going to bleed through. So you kind of just have to trust the process. And I know it looks a mess when you're doing it and you're like, what? I'm balling those up and You're really not seeing where that's going to be really pretty. And as you open them up, you can tell how pretty they're going to be when they get ironed out because of all those little wrinkles in them and everything. And this is just simple copy paper. It's so thin, and yet it transforms into these beautiful pieces. And I'm telling you, I just loved them in my journal. So I think I'll be doing these from now on and doing quite a few. I need to get some more colors of the spray inks so that I've got lots to, so let's iron these out and see what they look like. So I want to get, I kind of start on a flat corner, and they flatten out really easily. See? Just want to make sure all the corners are turned. Look at that. And then I flip it over and get the back side. And look at that. Isn't that beautiful? That's so beautiful. So that's what I'm saying. When you're starting to unwrap these, once you've seen them ironed out and you look at them when they're all rough and you're like, that's going to be gorgeous. That is going to be absolutely beautiful. So see, we've still got some of that white paper showing through. And this was the front part where we sprayed. Still picked up plenty in the back. A lot of times the back is just a little bit more muted. This is going to be gorgeous. I cannot wait for this. I can tell it's got that Oxide in this one. The Oxide spray. It's always a little bit chalkier. It's a little more opaque. So look at that. None of that came through. That Oxide spray, that blue, came through on this side. But look at that. Look at the difference in the colors. Isn't that beautiful? This is beautiful. And this one, you can see a lot of the spray up in here from the ink. And then I must not have sprayed a whole lot of the tea up there because it didn't travel and move as much. And I really think that these, I mean, they're gorgeous all crinkled up, and then when you iron them out, they really transform and become something quite beautiful. And again, you're going to get more of this look, this marbling look, the tighter you fold those together. I don't know that I would bunch them up any tighter than I was doing, just because they'll become very difficult to unwrap after they dry. But you could definitely go looser if you didn't want as much movement or play on these. And you would still get some of that variation. It just wouldn't be as much. But you would still get quite a bit. You just wouldn't have as much of the wrinkling. And those are gorgeous. Okay, so again, that was the third set that we did, where we dipped them, or we put them in the bucket, sprayed them down, and then followed up with either water or the spray bottle with the tea slurry in it. And that's what those ended up looking like. So I'm going to set those aside. Let me find that pretty one. There's that pretty one. I'm going to set that on top while we do the others. So you can look at that beautiful set. Okay, this was the set that we did second. So after we did the tea dye paper with the stencils, we did these. And these were the ones that we dipped into the tea slurry and then put in the second bucket and sprayed down. And you can see that starting off with a completely wet base really caused those distress inks and the oxides to move a lot more than when you start with a dry paper and then move them and spray on them. I feel like I've got an extra one over here. I think I do. Did I do another one, or did one just sneak in? I thought I did 8 apiece, but maybe I did. I might have just been one from the second set that I had done. Like I said, I still had quite a bit of tea left over, so I ended up just doing some more that I had on the side. So that I might have picked up an extra. Look at that. That's that peeled paint. And that, I want to say it's probably the Mariner. Uncharted Mariner and peeled paint. I think that might be what that is. Look at all that movement in there. Science. It's so pretty. And this was super easy. You know, I only did what I said, about a quart of the tea slurry. The first time I did this, I made a bunch, and I did, I probably made 3 times as many the first time I did it, and I had about 2 quarts. And I still had tea left over at the end of this one. And I think I tossed it, but if I had thought about it, look at that. That is going to be absolutely gorgeous. If I had thought about it, I could have refrigerated it and used some more. I do have some other things I could have tea dyed, so that's on me. I should have been better prepared and thought through that a little bit more. I was just so anxious to get the video out for you guys. All right, and now we're gonna watch them transform while we iron them. But anyhow, so to make a whole set of these, it doesn't take a whole lot. Like I said, I got all of these out of a quart of that tea slurry, and I could have easily done quite a bit more with it. Look at that. And then I've got a torn edge here. And sometimes this just happens. It happens when you're unraveling it, or it happened when, because the paper's so thin and it got wet, you know, too wet whenever I was pulling it in and out of the tea baths. So, but that kind of thing doesn't bother me. I would still make a journal page out of that, even torn, or I might end up using this as ephemera, some kind of a, you know, to make ephemera with, used as some kind of background paper. Oh, this is going to be gorgeous. So it was super easy. If you're in a hot climate as well, look at how beautiful that is. Why do I see dragonflies and butterflies? That is so, look at that. Anyhow, if you're in a really warm climate where you're getting a lot of sun, set them out, let them dry. This is a, you know, kind of a one-day thing. And you didn't even have to do them in one day. You could allow them to dry. You can kind of, you know, set them aside, leave them alone for a while. And then when you have some time on your hands and you want to mess with it, pull them out and then iron them, you know, while you're watching TV or listening to podcasts or whatever. And then you've made yourself a whole lot of papers to use in your projects. Background papers, pages for junk journals. Just beautiful. I really was surprised by the amount of interest in doing a process video. I don't know. I just thought that there were so many videos out there on tea dyeing that I thought nobody will be interested in this. And I honestly recorded these just because I was like, these are so beautiful. And so I wanted to share how they turned out with everybody. And I was surprised by the interest in the process video, but I'm glad that you guys liked it and that you wanted to see specifically how I did this. And so I hope that this was helpful for you. And if you guys have ideas, toss them my way. Put them in the comments. Let's share. I love sharing ideas. Just like the person was telling me about the plastic table runners. How perfect. They're already in that lace design. They're a nice plastic, and usually they're pretty intricate. So you're going to have nice lacy patterns in your paper that way. It is just so beautiful. Let me get some close-ups of that. I mean, look at some of those. And I hope that the video is picking up on how vibrant. It's like they're vibrant, but they're muted at the same time. It's almost like I don't know, kind of like a sunset. It's just, it's so bright. It's so beautiful. Or the colors are just gorgeous, but they're also just a little bit muted. And look at this. And that is it. But these are gorgeous. And where they sit and the inks drop down on the tray and they get darker in these spots as they sit there in those inks to dry. And they're just absolutely stunning. So if any of you have any tips that you would like to share, if you've done this before, if you want to share some tips, I've got to load up on more sprays because I'm definitely going to be doing a lot more of this, going to try different colors. I love these colors, but I'm going to definitely try different colors. Like I said, I need to get that wild honey, because could you imagine some wild honey in this? That wild honey color in that distress spray is just one of my favorites. So I do want to get some in that, but there you go. And that is it. I hope that this was helpful. I hope this is exactly what you guys wanted, those of you that wanted a process video, and that this is something that you can duplicate yourselves. If you liked this, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you haven't already. To all of my subscribers, I do appreciate all of your support. And until next time, bye.